Well, for some analysis of the debate, plus a snapshot of how our economy is tracking, I'm joined by independent economist Warren Hogan. Warren, thanks. Look, this was the final debate. This was the third debate they've done. We heard a lot of the same things at all of the debates, but I mean, overall, what did you make of it?
Well, I don't think we need three debates for the Treasurers in future. They're not really creating a narrative that any of us can buy into. I mean, we know what the government's doing. Their focus is on the care economy, and they're growing the size of government, with it a higher tax burden, and they're trying to do modest reforms at the margin. The coalition, we know that they're doing or planning to do what they've always done, and that is reduce regulation and allow the economy to work, keep some guardrails around the size of government, try and reduce the tax burden. But the messages aren't really getting through. There's a lot of noise. The housing policies, I think, are each as bad as each other. They're adding demand into a market that's got excess demand or an undersupply. So, look, I don't think this last debate added anything to what we knew. But I think we do understand that the government is there to, enact this care economy. It's growing the size of government. And we know that the coalition is going to try and put some constraint and some restraint around that. And of course, then there's the energy story. I think that's critical. And I think that got Taylor into a bit of trouble today in terms of funding that. Yeah,
one of the big times that they actually sort of blew up at each other was over disagreements over how much the potential nuclear power policy from the coalition will cost. One side says 600 billion, the other side says about 120 billion. That was one of the most interesting parts of the debate, but it's been something that has come up in the prime ministerial debates as well. Energy policy clearly important at this election, but the nuclear message, I don't know if it's getting out there very well.
Yeah, look, it was always a big gamble on the part of the coalition to put that out early. It doesn't seem to have been a disaster, but at the same time, it's not a leading point that they're taking to the electorate. And of course, it does continue to show that we've had this problem in this country for 15 years that we can't get our leadership on the same page around energy, and we know we have an energy-intensive future. In terms of the costings for the nuclear side, I don't think anyone really knows, and of course, it's nation building. We know that most nation building projects end up costing more, but if they are the right project, in the long run, they're a benefit. The electorate will decide, but the coalition isn't putting this nuclear policy front and centre. So it's hard to judge whether or not this is any kind of mandate around that this election.
You look at Jim Chalmers, I mean, how would you assess how he's performed over the past 3 years as Treasurer?
Well, I mean, he's done a good job at selling their story around trying to reorder the priorities of government. But he's also, he's gilded the lily a little bit on a lot of this sort of strategy. I mean, the reality under this government is government spending has hit new record highs. It is a very risky strategy to essentially be taking all the benefits that we've had over the last 20 years from the mining boom and the commodity boom and these wonderful exports that we've had, and then spending them. Because as we're seeing in the last month, this trade war is serious, and we're right in the middle of it. And of course, if we have any shock to our export markets because of what's happening between the US and China, if the demand out of China shrinks, the government's revenues are going to get hit hard. And then this question of can we afford it will come front and centre. I think our budget is very vulnerable to a significant blowout in this operating environment. And we don't have any space for that because we are now in deficit. So I don't think the Treasurer has done a bad job, but I don't agree with the policy strategy. I think it's risky. I think we need to contain the growth of the size of government in this country.
And what about, conversely, Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor the past 3 years? And you've talked about big spending. The coalition are pledging to spend almost as much money as Labor, matching virtually everything we've heard from all the big policies at this election as well.
Yeah, look, they have got a lot of spending, but at the same time, they are putting forward and supposedly committing to these disciplines around not growing the size of government more than the economy, not increasing the share of government, not increasing the tax burden on Australians. And you have to take them at their word because that very much is Liberal Party core economic thinking. So, sure, I mean, the retail politics in this day and age it doesn't make for good policy. And I think that's very clear to all and sundry. But I do think that a change of tact, at least a breather in the growth of government in this country is essential because we don't fully understand the negative effects. I think we're seeing government crowding out the private sector, which if that then stops businesses investing because they can't get hold of staff, of labour, we have got this huge technological wave coming. We've got to tap into that. And of course, then add to that the risks around what's happening with this trade war and how exposed we are. A much more financially and fiscally conservative disposition is required in this government.
Yeah, we saw the IMF report overnight downgrading world's GDP growth, including Australia, really due to the trade war. What sort of economy will whoever wins be inheriting?
Well, look, at the moment, the Australian economy is actually pushing forward pretty well. I mean, the key to any economy and its robustness is employment, and we are creating jobs. And so that is not an issue. Consumer spending seems to be coming back to life, and although business investment slowed a little bit, there's no signs that we're going to see a collapse as yet. So the next government will inherit an economy that's got a decent footing and a decent foundation. Of course, we have the clouds of a global trade war overhanging this economy, and that requires, I believe, a much more conservative approach than we've seen with this government that's really driven up the amount of spending in this economy from the federal government, more than any government in the last 50 years. So look, the economy's got a nice platform, but as the IMF forecast overnight showed, they don't know what's happening. None of us actually know what this is going to do because we have never seen a trade war. We've never seen tariffs go up by this much. And of course, the volatility around Trump and his pronouncements, as we just saw in the last 12 hours with the suggestion he's going to reduce China's tariff, we don't actually know what to plan for, which is the real enemy of business is uncertainty. So, look, we've got a decent platform, but we have challenges, and that's not a time to be going out and really being aggressive with your policy plans. It's actually a time for consolidation.
Independent economist Warren Hogan, great to have an extended chat with you on the set.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ed.